Wait,
There you go.
There we go.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, because I was.
Yay.
Yeah.
So is it live on my Facebook?
Yes,
Oh.
everything is live.
Really? I don't have a notification about that. That's interesting.
I do have it. I mean, I'm already watching.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I got
Okay.
yours. Yeah.
I just want to know so I can monitor comments.
So,
Is
Wait, we're not getting.
oh, we're still not getting sound.
I don't know why.
I can hear us.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, good.
It was lagging for a second from unmuting, but cool. Okay, so
All right.
hi everybody.
Hi.
Emily
Hello.
Francis. Everybody knows everybody.
I'm Jannica Morton. Scarlett's sitting here next to me. Hi.
Steven. Also, we have our names.
That
Oh, we
too.
do now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's me.
In case you forgot who we are.
Just in case, but yeah. So the proposed topic this morning was mindfulness and wellness and coaching services, personal improvement is pretty much the topic that we always cover and will always cover.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a good idea today for us to talk about how do you pick useful resources in those spaces. So how do you pick good mindfulness programs, or like how do you choose between different coaches,
Right.
or even like validating whether or not like a mastermind is worth being part of or something. So
It's a really, that can go all sorts of places.
yeah, but I figure it's relevant to like most
Yeah.
of the people that watch us.
Yeah. And what we're doing too
Right.
in our space. So I have gone to lots of coaches and lots of counselors and joined lots of programs.
So today's expert is Jannica.
I don't know if I should admit all of that. Definitely done a lot of coaching programs. One, to get an understanding of what's out there in relation to what we do. I really started that a couple years ago when my cousin Tony had the idea that she wanted to start a company that really supported that mom that is just broke and done and doesn't know what to do and needs that community. And she was looking at building products and doing an e-commerce store to do that. And from there, we launched it into a community event, a community program, and more of a mentorship and membership program. And so in doing that, I signed up for every conference you could imagine. And probably a dozen different female entrepreneur or female support groups or, get your shit together type of events.
Right.
And, from an evaluation standpoint, my whole basis was really looking at what they have to offer that's going to help, and I was looking in the female space. So what is going to help that mom who wants to do something more with her life now that her kids have hit an age that they don't really need her as much.
Okay.
So that was my criteria. So I was just signing up for anything that kind of fit that and then would explore within it. But then you don't really know, I think, until you get into it and then you start feeling the dynamic or how you relate to that coach or counselor, So I even signed up for some that were just, you could tell it was mostly men. And I felt, honestly, in some of those better, like I got a stronger support system than the rah-rah, we're women, we're power, blah, 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 we can do it. So
So you're looking for something that was a balance between the encouragement and affirmation side and some of the concrete, like, okay, this is the thing that you do in X situation type advice. Okay.
yeah, and so I've narrowed it down where I'm now only part of one group. Well, no, I take it back. I'm part of two, but one that I actually pay attention to. And that is Freshly Implemented by Amber McHugh. So she kind of combined both, and so it felt very congruent to where I was at. Whereas a lot of the others, I didn't feel like I was really getting what I needed, but I had to go through the process, right?
Right.
And those are from online membership programs. From more of the coaching, I really don't think you can evaluate someone until you get in a room with them and it's a one-on-one conversation.
True. There's quite a lot. Well, and there's quite a lot of what I see is like blended styles. Where people are doing like coaching, then they're also doing classes and courses, and they're doing like the advice and the tactical side.
Right.
And so you're right. The coaching piece, which is also usually the higher price piece. So like,
Yeah.
there are steps that you can go through where you can kind of get to a place where you feel like this makes sense to proceed, as opposed to needing to just try it.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that's I guess I pretty much walked through like my entire way of validating half of the stuff. It's like I want to know as much as I can about the person.
Right.
I want to know as much as I can about their background, because usually background is a part of what they talk about, and so like if those two things don't match, then that's an easy one. Like, oh, okay, I know you did this, but then you're saying you did this over here, so like those two don't match up.
Right.
And then part of it is like in like an 80-20 reverse, like if 20% of the content that I'm getting for free is something I can use today, it makes me feel much better about whatever is being offered than if it's
I trust I'll get something that's good for me if I
Right.
pay for it.
Right.
because if everything's behind the paywall, then like there's got to be something else. Like, I mean, then at that point it's really on the strength of someone's recommendation.
Well, and I think that's where a lot of coaches get their clients, is more from a recommendation than those ads and such on Facebook. Abe, this show is so boring without me. Whatever, you left us.
On a sort of related concept, so on Amazon, a lot of like no-name authors or new authors will put out
An ebook.
a ebook for free.
Yeah.
But then you get to the end of it, it's a friggin' cliffhanger. But now okay, this was actually a good story. I would like to pay. I want to know how it ends. So at that
Right.
point, you're committed to something that if it was free and it sucked, you're like, oh, good, at least I didn't pay for it. But like, oh my God, it was free and I can't stop reading the story.
Yeah.
So you end up paying like $87 for a book that should have been like $6.99.
Yeah, I did that recently. That was really frustrating.
Join us later on our Wealth Wheel topic of how to not pay $87 for a book.
How not to get suckered. Okay, so that would be the thing, because when you look at a buyer persona, I'm one of those early adapters who I want to try it all. I don't want someone to tell me, I do want recommendations, but I don't want someone to tell me, these are the things I'm going to offer you, and this is what you're going to get out of it, and blah, blah, blah. Like, those are great, but I don't really know until I sign up and try it. So
Right.
I love 7-day trials, 30-day trials, because then I can get in there and dig and play with it. My problem is I forget I signed up for it. So then 6 months later, I'm like, ah! But, so I suck at that. And I remember.
So you're the perfect customer, because everyone that does subscriptions wants the person
Yes!
to forget.
That's what I'm saying. I am the sucker for that. But then I've learned now, so as soon as I sign up for it, I set an alarm for, if it's a 7-day trial. 6 days later.
Oh yeah, that's
So
yeah. I'm that guy. I've always been that guy.
my thing I do to make sure that I don't get suckered into subscriptions is I have I always use temporary like
Like the preload. card
preload
things.
cards
Oh!
for the trials.
Don't tell people this. We're going to launch a membership.
We want our people to feel like we care about.
I'm just saying,
Not-
like,
yeah.
it's for things that are like a lot of subscriptions, you want to manage things, and you're like, okay, I want to try for XYZ. That's a good way of managing it, because
Yeah, for sure. I should do that.
because it basically like it will auto, and especially if it's only like enough to cover whatever subscription period you want or the initial, then it will auto deny, and then you're like, oh yeah, because that's the other thing too. All of those subscription services will email you multiple times to make sure that you like don't lose your subscription. So then
Right.
it gives me a reminder of, okay, right, this was here. Do I want to keep on with the subscription? That kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would think that would work for me. It doesn't. I just ignore it. Like, whatever.
Delete.
Well,
Spam.
so that's the whole thing. If you'd ignore it and use that method, then you won't get charged.
I know. I like your method. That's really smart. I was proud of myself for at least setting alarms.
Yeah.
but yeah, I want to explore and feel them out and experience them and see what they have to offer. And a lot of times joining them just to see, okay, is this similar to what we're thinking, or is it better? Is it worse?
Right.
Where do we fit in this model? And
The market research part of it.
yes,
yeah.
the market research part of it. And, that was my excuse for everything. Oh, this is market research. This is market,
I mean, I really do believe that, like, if you're going to develop and sell a product, it is incumbent on the person developing and selling the product to not so much know everything about the space, but at least to know, like, I would say 45%.
Yeah.
Because if 45% of what your market is something that you're intimately familiar with, you can at least answer most people's questions, especially if the 45% consists of like the top 10 or whatever. Because otherwise then you fail the validation test when someone's like the one person that's really like, okay, how does this compare to this section of this person's course here, and like what is my difference? And then if you're like, well, they're like,
Yeah.
not totally sure that I want to trust you with the rest of my money because like
You don't even know if you're selling me something somebody else made.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, and you get out there and you see so much of it.
Yeah.
It's just rip off from each other.
Right. It's good. Yeah. The coaching and success space is very iterative.
Oh, it very
Well,
much is. It's
And
you know,
essentially, when you boil them all down, they're teaching one concept, but the reason and the value for such a variety is everyone experiences and learns and is going to interpret something in a different way, where you can both be describing an apple to me, but someone does it a certain way where I'm like, I don't know what you're describing a watermelon, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Or someone's like, oh, it's an apple. You're talking about an apple. And so
Yeah.
just whoever you can get to help you make those connections and get your thoughts aligned with whatever that philosophy happens to be, that's why there's a value.
That's another thing too. I think is really big. Whoever is going to be leading / developed, I guess what you would say, the core of whatever it is that you're like being part of. I think it's very, very important to make sure that that person's mental ethos and like, I guess their outlook on life matches what you either want to be or where you are currently. Because
So you can see yourself in that
Yeah.
person no matter what
Yeah,
step
yeah.
of that journey you're on.
Because otherwise, then like you're doing something that is internally at odds, and like you're never gonna fully go through any of the things that are recommended or steps or practices or whatever.
Because you don't validate them.
Right? Because you don't validate it, and internally you're struggling with yourself. So like
Yeah.
that decision paralysis is heightened.
It's huge.
Yeah.
well,
Which is also why I believe that not all coaches are for all people, because that's the whole thing. Like there's different flavors of people. Every single person has a different way that they want to approach the world.
right.
Yeah.
And I think one of the issues I came across over the since 2015 when I started trying everything and looking at everything, one of the biggest issues, and I don't know how to say this without it sounding weird, but
Don't use it don't say it in a weird voice.
You can be weirder than Abe, so
this is true, or more cocky, so I guess I'm covered.
yeah.
Hold my beer.
So really, it was more, I would sit there and go, okay, I know more about this than they do. I've read more about this than they do. I've experienced more than they do. What they're telling me is bullshit. They don't even have the experience or the life, whatever, to be telling me this.
Right.
They don't understand it. What the fuck? Like,
Or it's an issue I've run across is something like that, where it's like, I can appreciate not everyone has the same life experience, but if you can tell someone is not coming from a place of empathy or even the idea that you can,
Yeah.
my experience is different. I'm
Right.
not invalidating your reality just because you
Right.
won't fit into my
Right.
shoebox of ideas
well,
or
and
whatever.
for sure, that's a key thing that coaches and counselors need to have. And
Take yourself out of that
yeah,
equation.
you cannot have that projection in there. But I would say that what I've seen a lot in the online coaching space, all of these that have popped up and, and whatever, they have a year or two of experience and they're in their 20s or maybe early 30s. And I'm sorry, out of the 45-year-old woman who has experienced a shit ton more than even a lot of 45-year-old women do, I'm sitting there listening to them and they're like, well, this is what happens and this is how it works and da-da-da. I'm like, yeah, no.
On paper, maybe.
That's not reality.
Yeah, they're definitely coming from an ascribed reality as opposed to an experienced reality or
Yes.
even a research reality. Because I can
Yes.
appreciate, like I've experienced this with like technology a lot. I can appreciate people that say, I didn't experience this, but I researched everyone else's like experience with this, and I've compared and contrast. And here's most of the experience based on these anecdotes. Right.
Right.
That's a journalistic approach. Like that's reporting on something.
Totally get
as
it,
opposed to telling people like this is how it works, and this is like this is how you go crush it. And it's like, okay, like what have you crushed aside from that book?
And I noticed your bookmark is 75% of the way through it, so.
Right.
I mean, granted, I will attribute a lot of what I've learned and my knowledge and experience through reading, but when I do, and I don't really read through the whole book, I skim a lot of it, but when I do, I then try to go out and apply it and see how it fits in life, or research it and see who has really used it and applied it and talk to them and get that experience.
And I like that too, because then you find out like, oh, well, I learned, X from this coach, and then I tweaked it this way to make it work for me. And I'm like, oh, maybe that tweak was what you needed to actually find success.
Yeah. There's quite a lot of that when it comes to, I would say, like coaching around technical aspects of business. So the dude that I like for the most part on like marketing and SEO and that kind of stuff, Neil Patel, a lot of what he's done in his like free offerings is the experiment part.
Oh
so
yeah,
say,
he's awesome.
Here's how I experimented with this method 15 times to figure out like what was, what's the min and max on this kind of thing. And it's like, okay, you're showing me the experiment, you're also pointing to where the source came from, or like whatever the change in the algorithm or whatever it is, so then I can try to replicate that. And then like his call to action at the end is always, so if you want something like this to happen, or you want to go deeper on this, or you don't want to do it yourself, then that's when you call me.
Yeah.
And I think I personally, my learning style, I appreciate that much more than I appreciate the people that say, well, you just got to really come and like experience the thing and then you'll figure out if it's right for you. But that's like after you buy in. And I'm like,
no.
Like, I didn't buy into religion that way. I don't buy my tech that way. I don't buy cars that way. Like, I don't do anything that way. So like my learning style and the way that I engage with stuff does not fit for that specific approach.
Yeah.
And I think there's definitely, I've seen like a bias across coaching for the online coaches, where because so many of them are natural extroverts and they automatically get energy from engaging with people, they put that as the most valuable piece. And then they come up against people that are mostly introverts that actually do not want to engage with people and trying to get as much value without needing to talk to you.
Right.
And they're telling people, hey, you have
fundamentally
to
change everything about your personality so that this will work for you.
And then they say, well, your success is based on whether or not you're like me.
Right.
As opposed,
and it doesn't work.
Because people value different things.
Yeah.
Right. And the monetary aspect of someone's current positioning is not totally the best marker for like what success means for them.
No, and I think that it really goes down to doing that due diligence up front. When you're talking to different coaches or whatever space it's in, whether it's counseling, coaching, mindfulness, whether it's group, whatever, but it's at the beginning really seeing, doing that research on that leader or on that group to understand where they're coming from and what their experience is and what they do value.
Right.
And you can see a lot of that, I think, at a superficial level in watching their social media posts and how they market to you and what they share with you. If it's all about me, and see me, and see me, and see me, you're going to get that type of person, and that's what they're going to expect as a value.
Right.
If it's more, here are the results, here are the experiments, these are things that have truly happened, and I'm here just to facilitate it, you're going to get a whole different, it's going to be more focused on the client versus focused on let me dump on you everything I think is right.
So it's funny, Abe said, what do you say to the phrase speaking my truth when to others it appears they have no experience in said issue? So that's interesting because there's a lot of times where that comes up when people are just sharing their experiences and they're not asking you to buy it. It's a completely different proposition when someone is using that as the reason why you should then part with your money and time.
Right.
Like, if someone has a bad experience somewhere and they tell everyone, this is my experience, then they're totally valid in expressing that.
That's their experience.
But if their reason if they're saying, this is my experience and you should then pay me / buy into my vision and help me build what I'm building because this is my truth, then it's like, great, that's your truth for you inside of that type
Write
of
a book and I'll buy it if I'm
That's not going to
interested.
transfer to me and I don't have to believe in it.
Yeah.
And it is incumbent on the person that's trying to build like a team or a company or a customer base to make sure that they validate for those people why those people should follow and invest time and effort.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I think that's with everything, though. I'm experiencing that in some relationships in my life where people are taking their experience and their truth and trying to project it onto my experience and my life and my decisions.
Mhm.
And it's a complete disconnect. And there's not, I've not found a way to break that and be like, sorry, not my reality. This is not the way it is. This is your perception through your lens, through your,
For
Right.
whatever bits of information
Yeah.
you've gotten from whatever that you've interpreted in a certain way, which have nothing to do with
yeah.
the people living this
And I had a
situation.
coach who was like that.
Where they're just like, this people just don't get it. It's like, no, you're not actually making the case.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that they don't get it. It's
I'm
like you're
not
making
dumb.
the
You
case
just
for
don't
it.
make sense. I promise. I can grasp.
I'm not stupid.
I understand all of the words you're saying. They
Yeah.
just don't make any sense when you put them together in the order that you did.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so Scarlett, when we were looking for someone to work with her,
Mhm.
I was very hesitant with a lot of people because I know her brain capability.
Right.
I know how she's very bright and how she can play games with people. And depending on how she connects with them, how she's going to choose to play that game.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was hard, like going through and thinking, okay, would this person work with her?
Mhm.
How quickly is she going to be manipulating them?
So it's funny, Ron. So I so we just signed up for Hulu
Mhm.
because like I stopped paying for one subscription. I was like, I can watch Hulu and it has some shows that I want to watch.
Rick and Morty.
Well, so yeah, there's the new season of Rick and Morty, and also Brooklyn Nine-Nine is on there.
I have not. So that's good. Okay.
It's quite hilarious. If you like things like The Office, Brooklyn Nine-Nine is
Oh
great.
yes, yes. I do.
And then so King of the Hill's on there, and I haven't seen King of the Hill forever, right? So I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna casually rewatch King of the Hill. So the very first episode, there is
Like season 1, episode 1.
season 1, episode 1. There's a situation where Hank yells at Bobby in the store, and somehow it goes around town that he's abusive. So then someone calls CPS,
Oh,
and then
jeez.
they come to give him like counseling and a reprimand on it. And they're like, you have to acknowledge children's validity and like everything, and let them express themselves. And Hank's like not about it in any sense, like any case.
Yeah.
But then you see Bobby take all the advice and then use it against Hank because they actually
Oops.
throw out the case because the supervisor knows Hank. He's like, that's stupid. Like nothing's happening there. So they call the house and they say, oh yeah, we're sorry. We told the guy from LA that they're making fun of California people versus Texas.
Yeah.
They're like, we told the guy from LA that he needs to he doesn't understand, blah blah.
Right.
And so Bobby's like, oh thank you, and then hangs up the phone and doesn't say anything. So then he basically is using that against Hank for the entirety of the week.
That's so wrong.
And it was perfectly calculated. That's what kids will do in a lot of cases because
People dramatically underestimate kids.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, completely underestimate.
To
Yeah.
the point where
And I was that kid, so that's why I was laughing.
that.
at that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, parents.
Yeah.
Oh.
We had a very, very affirming art teacher that was all about child empowerment, and we took that to the nth degree. It was
I can
It was
imagine.
me and my entire class because I think there was something in the water around 87, 89 where all the kids were just mostly intelligent and practical application. So who cares about books, but definitely we use everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, little mad scientist geniuses.
My mom
Yeah.
loves to tell the story of the time that, back in the olden days when your phone was attached to a wall with a
Yeah.
cord so you couldn't run away, when your 2-year-old grabs a chair, pushes it to the door, climbs up, unlocks it, moves the chair, and bolts outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
yeah.
sounds familiar.
Yeah.
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 So bringing it back to the
Kids
thing,
are
you
geniuses.
definitely have to understand the coachy match
Yes.
and what are the different things, and then
Will they be outsmarted by your child? That is a good coach.
Right.
or being outsmarted by the client because
Yeah.
in a lot of cases, the coach will if the client knows how to manipulate the whole coaching paradigm, they will actually make the coach put way more on the table than is necessary for the situation, and so you can find yourself sucked into this one black hole of a client and end up neglecting other ones because this person is just manipulating your own set of
Yeah.
biases.
Yeah. And I think about that in what we're doing and what we're setting up for our clients. And, there's definite people that we worked with that fit really well, and then others that you could see that it took some time to adjust to the different personality types and traits. And I think it's comes down to, if there is a capability of some collaboration and working together and being comfortable with each other, then you can get there. But if it's like right up front and you're like, oh, this is so obvious that, you know, client is well far advanced than the coach, or their personalities just don't even blend, or they don't even see eye to eye, then there needs to be some sort of clause where you can step away after the first session, or some of those contracts that I looked at and signed were like a full year or 6 months, or, you know, and you're looking at thousands of dollars and you're risking it without really even knowing. You know, maybe a call or two will get you there, but it might not. You might not really see the real dynamic until you're a few sessions into it. And so I don't know, when to think about how I would tell someone to go and find someone in the mindfulness space, like, I don't know what I would say.
I mean, so I feel like there's probably a solid rule that people can use as far as their experience, which is, it's probably not a good idea to go into a full spec consulting, coaching, contractual relationship in any of those settings if you've never tried one before.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's just too much in the freemium space. There's too much in the conference space that to check out before you dive deep into, like, oh, I'm going to sign a contract and be part of this thing that's going to commit me and my money for a year.
Right.
So that's I mean, you wouldn't put someone on a motorcycle if they've never ever even ridden a bike. Like, that's just not a good idea.
No.
So yeah, I really feel people should like it, because if I were a coach and I was validating like a client, and this is probably more because I don't want to be a coach, so I'm trying to validate everybody, it would be, okay, what have you done up to this point? Like, what are two good coaches you know, and what are two bad coaches? Because like, if that question can't be answered, then like, I don't know if you know I'm good for you versus I can't figure out.
Really good way to look at it. I like that, because I would say that the last coach I worked for, I really did approach it that way. And you know, I knew what I didn't want. You know, at that point, I really knew what I didn't want. And I was looking for what I did want, for sure. Yeah, that is a really good way to do it. But then again, so I would say it depends on how they're looking to find. So many people are finding these coaches through social media, because it's like every other post is a sponsored ad by someone who's going to coach you to be healthy, fit, smarter, wiser, better parent, whatever. It's like there's someone in every space. So how do you then compare, like if your feed has 4 different coaches, how do you compare them just off of their
Make
social
them
media?
fight. Game of Thrones is over. I have nothing to live for now. So
I mean, so I would say that
who wants to be in the Iron Throne?
that is
Fight.
actually kind of a valid method, because
Who wants it more?
it's a time investment, right? Like, so you're trying to decide if it's worth investing money. So the first thing that you can spend is time, and really diving into who these people are and like what do they offer. And I mean, it's not super quick to see, but it's relatively quick to see, like, who's going to stick around? Because that's the whole thing. Like, coaching is not a single instance of something. It's not a 1, 2, 3, every month type thing. This is a long-term process. This is like at least, I mean, that's why they have 1-year contracts. These are things that take time.
It does take time. It takes a lot of time.
Inside of a 4 to 5 month span, watching someone's like output, you can kind of see very quickly, is most of this, and more, this is my brain doing the whole data analysis piece, is most of this sales, or is most of this concrete, right? Or is this person putting out a whole lot of value and then like consistently putting out a lot of value, so there could be more? Like, that's kind of the gauge. Like, for me, if I follow someone and I see like 50% sales conversations, or the other one that is a real big no for me is affirmations. If it's mostly affirmations, like go crush it, let's kill it, like here's all the things, like you're not going to succeed at life if you don't do X 5 times a day. If it's all of that stuff, I'm like, yeah, that sounds like BS.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm in the same boat.
If someone, now for me, a better gauge would be like this person says, I'm trying XYZ today, and here's what I learned. I'm trying this thing, I tried this thing a week ago, and here's what I learned. Oh, today I learned this thing. Like, then I'm like, okay, I'm kind of plugged in for that. Even if it's just random stuff, right? Like
Yes.
you ever seen Just Shower Thoughts?
No.
So it's a feed that's like, I think it's replicated across like Tumblr and Twitter and Reddit, but basically it's a random submission of people's like thoughts in the shower.
Oh, I
And
love that.
It kind of just becomes
Because that's
random.
where all the thoughts come from.
Right. It's really just random thoughts, right?
Yeah.
But it's something where like there's a lot of things where someone's like, oh, I never considered this versus that, right? That's engaging to me, as opposed to if someone's like, oh, here's all the things that suck today.
Yeah. Okay, so when I was doing a lot of posts for One Broke Bitch, when we did that a few years ago, that tended to be the type of posts I did was, this is my experience, this is what I'm learning, this is what I took away from it, whatever, just because that's more of who I am, and I want to learn, and I want to try, and I want to share that.
And that's, for me personally, what I find relatable and interesting, because it's not just everything staged and beautiful. It's like, this is the reality, and that is what people that, especially, you know, if you're going through a transition or a crisis or just trying to change your life in a certain way, you're looking for someone who's going to have gone through something similar. Or, oh my God, you got 4 kids? I've got 4 kids. Oh my gosh, just on that level, I can connect with like how crazy
Life is.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think that, especially for people who are going through transition or life changes or whatever, it's so imperative to connect with people who maybe don't have the exact same experiences, but at least have an open mind and some level of that life experience so that they can share with you and that you can learn from each other. Because transition, midlife, like all of that, it's a real thing. It's like crazy. It's, you know, your whole world changes, your relationships change.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's days where I'm going, wait, what? Why am I, what? Like, what happened? What happened? Why am I on this path? And yes, I chose it, and yes, I designed this life and all of that, but I think so differently in so many ways than I did 10 years ago.
Right.
And yet at the same time, it was the same basis of my thoughts. It's just now they're so much bigger and so much more open and so much more inclusive. And I think that there's these times in people's lives, I'm just going to use it as age, but I think it could also be experience. I think a 20-year-old who's had a lot of experiences could be at the same place that a 50-year-old is who has a lot of experience.
Right.
So I'm not necessarily saying...
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa.
Well, I was going to say, a 20-year-old with a lot of experience could be at the same place as a 50-year-old with no experience.
Yes,
Right.
yes. So I'm just using it though from the perspective of, you typically, if you look at the normal life, you have these experiences as a teenager, and then you get a little bit more mature, you have experiences in your 20s.
Right.
You're testing, you're learning, you're growing, where do you fit, whatever.
Right.
Your 30s, you're kind of
Kinda
settling
solidifying
in.
that, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And then your 40s, you're like, what the fuck? And everything changes. Like, I don't know, everyone I know, that's how it is. And then your 50s, it's kind of like this new paradigm where you're living it out.
Right.
So, you know, I think that's one of the things, like if you're in your 30s and you're going to a coach in their 50s or you're going to a coach in their 40s, you're going to get an experience, if they've had life experiences, you're going to get an experience that's so much broader.
Yes.
Because they're going to be like, oh yeah, I get that. Yeah, I did that. You know, this is what happened to me.
Right.
This is how I took it. Might not be the right advice for you, but at least you can take that data point and apply it to, you know, another conversation.
That's where, I mean, I think, you know, there's definitely been a massive surge in the cult of mentorship. And, you know, just like coaching, something else that gets abused, because, you know, I see 25-year-old mentors and I'm like, you can't mentor anybody.
I know, that cracks me up all the time.
So you can't mentor anyone but a 10-year-old, but like, you know, good for you.
Good luck.
But it's well, let me rephrase that. You can't mentor anyone that is not beyond a 10-year-old in experience, because there's a lot. I do know a lot of 25-year-olds that have done things that I wish I had done, as I didn't get to until
Yeah.
I was 30. And so like them mentoring their peers in this, because they've had this advanced experience, does make
Right.
sense.
It comes down to experience.
Yeah,
It really
yeah.
doesn't come down to age. It comes down to experience.
Right.
It's like, you're 17, but you are a fucking beast at social media management because you've been doing this literally your entire
Right,
life.
right.
Teach me.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Back in my day, we had to talk to people with their mouths in person.
Well, and that's where I think it's so interesting when I talk to people who are not open to learning and trying and saying yes. You know, if you're not willing to experience life, you're not going to grow. Like
Yes,
how
yes.
I'm blown away. I met a lady one day. That was the first time out of the state of North Carolina. That is a tiny little state, tiny state. And she lived on the west side of North Carolina. She had never even been to Raleigh,
How
Durham.
old was
Somewhere around my age, like early mid 40s.
Yeah.
Like,
I
her
mean-
perspective was so skewed.
Because it was just based on the amount of experiences that were able to pass through her life in her locale.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and she was from a pseudo small town.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
So, you know, her culture experiences, her experiences about races, like it's so skewed over there, it's ridiculous, you know, and then
Fun. So remember, we had someone ask on. Oh, you guys weren't here. So when me and Abe did the show, we had someone ask about MLMs. So we were breaking down basically how you would take an idea for a business and like turn it into an actual business. Like
Yeah.
what are the steps that you go for, like validation, customers, that kind of stuff. And so the MLMs were brought up, and we were talking about why MLMs are not set up for the people in them to succeed.
yeah.
One of the places that MLMs have the most success is in small town America, because a lot of the experience is so narrow. There's not a lot of people that can say, okay, the MLM is similar to this business and here are the skills that you need, but this is also why you shouldn't spend the money there. If you're going to do this, you should just do it over here.
Right.
And so that's kind of like, you know, you see that with MLMs, you see that with finance instruments, you see that with, what's the other one? Sometimes it's even like store offerings, right? Like if your town is so small that the only thing that makes sense to be there is a Dollar General or a Walmart, it's gonna be a much smaller set of offerings and like even like value of items
Yeah.
than if you're in a place that has multiple different competing vendors.
Right. Yeah. Oh, it's a paradigm shift when you have to put yourself in the place of someone who is in such a sheltered, limited viewpoint of experiences.
Yeah.
I just think about that within my own family. I'm like, well, one, Army brat, so the idea of living in one place for any amount of time, more than 3 years, is just a little weird.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
even my grandparents and my great-grandparents, they traveled. My mom's parents, it was like the way back World Wanderers, which is their like silly little thing, but I mean the entire family would travel all over the world. So I mean they, had their family trips to like Greece and Italy and all these different places that they all went just because they were like, this is a teeny tiny little world up here. I mean they live near Chicago, so it's not like they're in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
But they're like, oh my God, why would you stay in one place your whole life? Like just,
Well,
and
I don't understand. Yeah, I don't get it. Like, is the mentality and the way people are and the way they interact and
you can
I mean,
love
it's
where you're
changed.
from, but still want to see other things.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and there's definitely, I mean, I even know, like, so here in Dallas, we have a pretty big, like, mix of people, right?
Right.
But I know people that have never traveled outside of the DFW area.
Yeah. I don't even.
Like,
I can't.
like large amounts of people that have never traveled outside DFW.
It's ugly here, people.
So,
Go somewhere pretty.
This is one of those things where, again, I literally understand the words you are saying, but they are
get it.
so far removed from my reality that I'm just like,
yeah.
what does that even mean?
And like,
What would that be like?
I guess I would say, like, semi-anthropologically, I wanted to understand, like, so I was like, just explain to me, like, what is good about this, right?
Yeah.
And, like, try not to be, like, condescending to it, because, like, obviously, that's not the way that I want to be. But, like, okay, tell me what is this? And really, it's scope and control, right? There are simple things that can be pretty much handled in a manageable way at a time frame that those people are comfortable with. And unfortunately, the rest of the world doesn't wait. So like there's a lot of macro changes that will impact that like in the future.
Right.
But that is their paradigm. And when I think about it, it's kind of like the whole like cost benefit analysis for them, where they say if 85% of my experience is this, and I can maintain this, then I'm just not going to think about what might happen in the 10 to 15 years when this goes bad.
Ugh. Yeah.
I guess if you're like pathologically risk averse, maybe that
So
ought
there's
to.
yeah, there's probably a lot more people like that than.
I don't mean that in a judgmental way, but I mean that might be
Yeah.
like you are
Like your
so
your risk
not able
profile
to.
is so small that you're like, I just can't.
I
not.
can't even go outside of where I am now, where I know things.
And sometimes
I know
it's-
people like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes that is a socioeconomic thing, and then
Yeah.
sometimes that is just it's so. In most cases, I feel like it's socioeconomics that turns into a mental like paradigm of thinking.
Well,
about
but
the
you don't
world.
want to admit I'm poor and I can't travel. Instead, it's like I just don't want to go out
Exactly.
of here.
I don't want to risk my safety, my mental, like who might I encounter, what will I have to do?
My mindset is always, well, you can always be poor.
You can be poor anywhere.
So you
trust
should
me.
try some stuff and see if you're not poor, and then worst case scenario, you just go back to what you're doing. Like,
My answer, like every time someone asks me, you know, or gives me an opportunity to try something, it's always, okay, how bad could this be? Like, what am I going to regret? What's the worst that can happen? And am I okay with that? Okay. And even sometimes when I'm not okay with what's the worst that can happen, I'm still like, ooh, I still really want to do that. I want to experience that.
I've,
I want to live.
I've said it before and I'll say it again, but my uncle always says, when you say no to something, you know exactly what you're going to get, which is nothing. If you
Yeah.
say yes, the possibilities are endless. It might be bad, but you have no way of knowing
Yeah.
if you say no.
Well, I think of that and applying it to Leonardo da Vinci. And
Yeah. He was a yes person.
he was completely a yes person. Like, yes,
Yeah.
I want to see that. Yes, I want to try that. Yes, I'm going to do this. Yes, yes, you know.
Please, you share?
Please, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's another reason why I love so much of what he does. And I look at, you know, some of the I don't know, main people out there who, you know, such as Richard Branson and his statement of say yes and then figure it out later. I love that, you know?
There's a part of me that loves that and feels that, and then the part of me that's like a very meticulous planner and like must
Well, yeah.
determine. That part of me is like, no, bitch, no.
Well, I'm the same because I want to organize it all and I want to know what's all involved. But if I don't say yes, I might lose my chance of even getting to that point. And I can always like say yes, I'm going to try that, or yes, I'm going to do that, and be like, you know, into it and go, you know what, I really am not capable of doing this, but this person is. So here you go, you can work with them or whatever. Like,
Yeah, I think as I've gotten older, I've been more willing to be like, you know what? At this point, I probably know someone who does. So worst case, all I did was introduce someone.
Connect them, yeah.
I didn't climb to the top of the mountain, but I found you a Sherpa. So
yes. So I
Pay
think
them.
like, and even with and that's what I did with all the coaches and counselors and all the programs was like, okay, I'm going to get something out of each of these, right? So the worst that's going to happen is I'm out some money.
yeah.
That's the worst that's going to happen.
Well, and that's the thing, especially if you're making it like you're not bankrupt.
No.
You're not. You're taking a risk, but you're not making like some crazy wild
Stupid
like
decision.
disaster risk
Yeah.
in this quest for whatever.
Right.
And that's actually the thing. So like in
Risk, but with good judgment. Like that is what you should be
in the
trying
socioeconomic aspect of like someone, you know, being poor and not having the resources to really like do the expansive travel and experience, then it becomes a situation of, okay, how can you push the boundaries of your current space in a way that doesn't put you at risk, but
Right.
still brings in new things? And you know, that's why the internet has been
Be a
fantastic.
nanny and move halfway across the country.
Well, there's that. I was gonna say, and there's what's the other one? There's a lot of people that will like work festival circuits and stuff.
Oh, yeah,
right. Where it's
definitely.
like, you know,
Or
you're-
Peace Corps or any
Yeah,
of those
yeah.
other
There's
organizations.
festivals, there's conference junkies, there's, you know,
Right. And-
concert,
and
there's
you
so
can
many.
you can do stuff that is like expanding your horizons and at the same time fulfilling some of the basic like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Especially because for the most part, if you're in a place where socioeconomics doesn't let you travel as much, then that means that you're pretty much in the $35,000 to $40,000 a year range, or the minimum wage range. So you might as well work somewhere else that's going to pay at about the same and experience a few
And
other
experience,
things.
yeah. But the thing is, even open your mind to that point. A lot of
Right.
people are not to that point to be able to do that because they are so stuck in survival mode or the safety
Yeah.
mode or they're so
I
risky.
think
that's
that's
not-
what's contributing to a lot of like kind of the millennial work from anywhere mindset is like,
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
either be stuck here or I can go somewhere else and be stuck there for a while. So why
Right.
not?
Right.
And technology does allow you to stay connected to friends and family even if you're away. So
And that is a
that
big,
fear of like my people, like
Yeah,
your
yeah.
people are in your phone. Like
well, that's
you're gonna talk to them more on FaceTime than you ever did when you lived next door. Like be honest
Well,
with
and
yourself.
it's so different. Like that wasn't available
No.
in my 20s at all.
Nope.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, late 20s, yes, but no, so
It's not like
different.
those kind of chains of holding people into one place, a lot of those are breaking away. So at a certain point, it's
Yeah.
like you're locking yourself into a
It's
box.
a choice at that
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
especially if there's a situation where your family can't really provide material support in certain cases. Because I know there's a lot of people that make the case like I need to stay close to my family because those are the only people that that are backing me up. Right? My car breaks down. I've got someone that I can call. Like all of these other things. But when you don't have even that, there's not really a point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Try something new
Sure.
and maybe you'll be that, helping hand to, let more of your family or friends kind of see a way out.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm reading some of our comments in Twitch and like what Ace Platinum is saying.
Mine's frozen, so I can't.
He says, I really hate when people add everyone from their own on Facebook. That's what I've been dead against for a couple of years because with the amount of rumors and cyberbullying that goes on, I need to have the right people on my friends list. So he's thinking of himself as because I'm an extrovert and I like to be social. But then I thought he said he was an introvert, so that's why I was like, huh? No.
Well, yeah, he was so because I asked if he was introvert or extrovert, and then he was saying like he thinks of himself as an extrovert because he likes to be social, but then he wants to be cautious of social interactions online because
Right.
you can't really tell how people want to interact with you. And it's funny that actually transfers over into the professional world too.
Yeah.
Because LinkedIn turns into this cesspool of people that are like just adding you and wanting to sell you things. So they're like, "How are you doing today? Want to engage?" And
Yeah.
a lot of times, like my mindset is like, I don't care about this because I'm here to do business, and then I also don't want to encourage that because
Yeah.
like that behavior is benign on my side, and then like I've seen inboxes from some of the female professionals that I know where it's just all types of like non-business related, like
Yeah.
trying to date you, marry you, whatever type of garbage.
Right.
And I really do think that like we went into this weird crossover where social selling and the social media paradigm meant people didn't have to like, I want to say be professional, but like really some segregation of like work life in that sense. Everyone's like, no, this is all the same thing. Like there aren't boundaries. Like, let's be free and connect with people. And it's like, okay, that's great. But then there are a lot of people that abuse that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It gets bad.
And I mean, the whole like introvert versus extrovert thing, there are different slices for different people and everyone will interact differently, but then there's also just a little bit of awareness of like read your audience or understand who's the audience you want to interact with.
Yeah, I get that completely.
So I think more people should be like Ace and police their Facebook connections and their LinkedIn connections and their social connections so that they're actually meaningful and not just like, oh yeah, I've got 1,500 followers or friends and what does that mean? Oh, it doesn't mean anything, it's just a number.
Yeah, I've been going.
And 1,200 of them are
through
trying to sell me something.
Yes,
Right,
that's
right.
what my LinkedIn is anymore. It's they either want to marry me and move me to India or some of the Arab nations, or they want to sell me something.
I just realized, I don't know the other day, but like in Messenger on Facebook, there's like this like other little tab of like all of the people that like, because I have it says like if I don't know you, you can't message
Yeah.
me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the most popular girl in the dance. Man, I know which gang to join.
I just avoid that whole thing. I don't even click on it anymore because, nope. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
It's just not good. It's just
Yeah.
not. I have no desire to be in someone's harem in another country and let them suck on my toes.
Oh.
No, that's like the going thing. But I mean, that right there would require therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Please stop taking my mouse. I'm trying to control this. I think so many, women especially, and this probably does happen to men. I just don't hear it as much.
Well, they're not
They probably don't care. They're like, really?
Honestly, I would probably say it doesn't really happen to men because I don't know. I actually really never
porn
met a
bots.
woman that's gonna. I've never. Well, that's a bot.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a bot
You
run
know
by a
what,
man.
though?
I've never met any professional women that would ever think to interact that way.
No, you're right. I haven't either. But I'm thinking of something Grant said to me this week. So he's 14, middle school, on Instagram and Facebook. But on Instagram, he gets hit up all the time by women who are posting like not so appropriate pictures. And so he started playing with them. And I'm not even going to tell you. Some of the stuff is just not what I want to know. But yeah, some of them are real, like they're women responding to him. I mean, it could be a man pretending to be a woman, but I don't know.
That's interesting. And you said
Sadly
Instagram, right?
scary.
Instagram mainly, but it's like he even with this last one, he sent a picture of the dogs. Rocket, let's just put it that way. And asked if she wanted more, and she
Right.
quit bugging him. Oh my gosh! But
I mean, generally speaking, sorry, Mom, if you're listening. I mean, my thing, if you get dick pics, is I'll just like send one back.
I've
Like
seen,
send me a naked pic. Don't mind if I do.
yeah.
And
There's
it's
just-
usually the response is quite aggressive. So
I really
that's
just-
when blocking.
I
happens.
really just don't understand the mentality of like.
Nobody wants to see your penis.
Yeah,
I
that-
promise.
that-
Nobody.
no one wants
That
to.
being the open,
No one.
like that even being like that being an unsolicited move. That's the really thing I don't understand. And
Either.
I feel like this also goes back into sales, right?
Yes.
In a lot of cases, if
But what
someone-
about now?
yeah, like if someone doesn't ask you to sell, then it's literally exactly the same way. Where it's like, oh, hey, how are you doing? I don't know anything about you as a person. I want to sell this thing to you. What?
Yeah.
Like, why does that make sense? Did you get anything from me that said I was looking for that?
No, that's the thing. I'm always blown away. Like, why?
If let me see that D did not come out of my keyboard, then
Yeah.
Yeah.
assume no.
Like,
No.
If I wanted something from you, then I would ask for it,
Yeah.
Right.
right? Like if you were saying like this is the thing that I do, and I say, oh, please tell me more about this, great. But if you add me, if I like something and then you add me and then you try to sell me, I'm like, hey, that's you read way more into that direction than it actually is.
If I say hi, that does not mean that I want a picture of your wee
Right.
wee. Just don't. So Scarlett asked, did Leonardo ever commit a crime?
That is
I
true.
don't know if he did or not. I would have to look.
I will research it, but I would guess based on the time he lived, he was probably a heretic and 50 other things that broke the law because of the fact that he was not a follower and
Right.
towing the line.
Well,
so.
he did get arrested.
Right, but I
He
mean,
didn't, but it wasn't.
and a lot of for his time in history, a lot of people were getting arrested just for having different thoughts.
Yeah, which
Burned
that
his
would've
witches and
sucked for us.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's people that want to take us back there, so that's
Yes.
yeah. It's
Absolutely
definitely
not.
there's definitely an idea of like people look back at people that we consider to be smart or like well accomplished or even today's like intellectual celebrities, and they're like, oh yeah, they're always like appreciated and all this other stuff. And it's like, no, actually they're not. A lot of people hate or disagree with what they say until afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and usually the people that are most respected for some intellectual like prowess or whatever, you find out afterwards that they were lying. So
Well, it just goes back to what do you trust and how do you even choose people? I had
Well, that
that
ties to our thing
experience.
last week, what we were talking about too. Just
Yeah.
just how do you know something's right until later when it's proven or not proven
Or not
disproven.
proven. So I hired a coach, well respected, recommended, the whole bit, and crossed a lot of boundaries. A lot of went through the would not have ever guessed it.
right.
Well, especially in your experience working with others before would have prepared you if that was a
Right.
normal experience or something you were seeking. You would have known to be like, hey, get in my business real deep.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those wow. And then what do you do? Because is this just a one-off thing that happened, or is this something that is in
More
the
of
way
yeah.
his practice is? And with certain people, like how would I know? Like then do you put a comment out there? Do you do you share what your experience is? You don't want to ruin the reputation if this was like just a
A
weird
bad-ish interaction
yeah,
based on like, yeah.
you know, but then at the same time, like, shit, I don't want some other person to have to go through that and experience it. So,
I mean, there's definitely, I think about that a lot too, because, you know, there's some people that I've had bad business interactions with that I'm like, well, you know what, that could have been just that we just did not get along, so we couldn't do business. I've only experienced one time where the things that happened with me then exacerbated themselves and went on, and then more and more people had similar experiences.
yeah.
And so like that, and I wonder about that. But in most cases now, I guess I can look back and I'll say, like, with the experience, I can kind of see like, okay, here are the red flags for what would make this habitual bad behavior versus inexperience or mistake.
Yeah. But again, do you know, like if you're picking someone off of social media and then you look at their reviews, or you do a Google search and you look at their reviews and they have, you know, 4 or 5 star review and there's hundreds of people that comment, or 30 people or
Right.
whatever.
I mean, I pretty much always think that that's a lie until proven not.
Well, I do too with reviews and
Yeah.
such, but still you think of most people and how they go about.
I've straight up like basically social media stalk people like that. I'll read a review and then like message them like, hey, I'm interested in this thing. I saw you commented. Can I ask you some questions on it?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a good, yeah.
And people generally are very receptive to it, and you know, giving feedback, you know, kind of more in detail. And then you can kind of tell like, oh yeah, someone just asked all their friends to write a review because
Oh yeah.
they
Yeah.
can't, you know, that person can't speak intelligently on it. So it's like, oh, so your rave review, how much it helped you, but you can't actually like
Articulates
talk
me
to me
what
about it
what
at
the
all?
help was, yeah.
Well, reviews in general, you know, so many
Yeah.
of them are paid for. I don't even.
But I
Yeah.
mean, that in itself, because I mean, that's the great thing about it being on social media. I mean, you can find a way to like message someone
Yeah.
anywhere.
That's
And
I
then,
mean, I do personally think that one of the best ways of weeding out bad coaches and other self-improvement folks is they should try to throw a conference.
true. Yeah. And see what happens. See who their clientele is and who their other speakers are.
Exactly. Because if no one will speak
Yeah.
with you and no one wants to attend your conference, you're in.
It's a good sign.
And you still go through with it, you'll be broken, therefore probably not do this again, and so therefore we don't have this problem. Or you'll realize that maybe I shouldn't do this, / I should go and do some more research and revamp and try to add more value into my offering.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a good way.
I mean, it's the proof in pudding piece. And it doesn't have to be massive, right? It can just be like something where you're trying to get 50 people to show up into one room, but like that's still,
Yeah.
like overcoming that hurdle is still a big deal.
It's a
because
huge deal.
it really does prove whether or not people think that it's useful.
Yeah.
And if you're there and you know that most of these people are your friends and they only came, like as the person that's trying to sell or like, you know, get people to buy
if you're on
into
a first
to
and
what
last
you're
name
offering.
basis with everyone in that audience, either you're amazing with names or it's probably not a huge audience.
Exactly.
It's your friends and family.
Well, and friends and family won't pay for tickets, so usually you only give it to them to pack the room. So you like, someone will know internally. Okay, like I didn't make any money from this. Like it doesn't matter if the rest of the world knows or not. Like you will know.
Yes. And then you change your
Yeah.
whole tactic.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wait, what is he saying? Oh. Anyway, so yeah, did we even answer what was our original question?
So what was the topic? No.
Coaching.
I thought we stayed close to it.
Yeah, I think we
Nice.
stuck to it
I
most
feel
of
like the
time, yeah.
tangents were appropriately directed back to how
Yeah.
to tie into coaching.
It was how
So-
to train your dragon, right? Today.
How do
So here's what I think we do. So now that we've had the initial preliminary, now we could we should, well, Abe's probably listened to at least half of this, maybe. So part 2 tomorrow is then Abe gets to answer all these questions.
Oh, I thought it wasn't here tomorrow either. Isn't he Tuesday and Thursday?
No, he's here tomorrow.
Oh.
Yeah,
He
perfect.
might not be here Wednesday. We're not sure yet.
So anyone interested, tune in tomorrow to see Abe answer the question of how do you pick mindfulness and coaching, and what makes good and bad mindfulness coaches.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It will be a drinking game, and everyone will need to be calling in to work afterwards.
A drinking
Also, does anyone know how much an Uber to get from Dallas to Louisville is?
Legitimately, tomorrow we should do a giveaway.
Okay, what's the giveaway?
I don't know. We're gonna
We'll,
figure that
we'll
out.
figure it out. There'll be a giveaway.
Yes.
One of your kids, you've got like 25
Oh
of them or
yeah, I
something.
have 4.
By the pound.
I think there's some legal problems with trying to give away children.
Oh,
We're not-
Scotty's 18. He's an adult.
He's
it's
an
fine.
adult.
But yeah, tomorrow we'll definitely have a giveaway.
All right, and it won't be one of my kids, apparently. We're not allowed
Maybe.
to do that.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah. I think that's probably a good place for us to sign
I
off.
think so
Yep,
too.
I gotta get some work done.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We will see you tomorrow as we wait with bated breath to see what Abe's thoughts on coaching.
Oh,
Yes.
good.
Picking a winner is.
Yes, picking a winner in coaching. So.
He's
Awesome.
gonna have some good thoughts on that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
will.
Freaking All right.
All right,
Bye,
bye guys.
Bye, everyone.
Wrong mouse. Everyone still be cool.
I can eat my food. I'm starving.